I, 34M, think my wife, 32F, has been lying to me for months, and I don't even recognize my own life anymore. Alright, I never thought I'd be that guy posting here, but here we are. My wife and I have been together for 9 years, married for 6. Up until recently, I genuinely thought we were solid. Not perfect, sure, we argued like any couple, but nothing that felt fatal. We had routines, inside jokes, weekend grocery runs, dumb shows we watched together. Normal life. But about 4 to 5 months ago, something shifted. It wasn't one big obvious thing, more like a bunch of small cracks that kept spreading. She got sharper. Like, everything I said annoyed her. I'd ask a simple question and she'd snap back like I was interrogating her. At first I thought maybe it was work stress, she said it was. That became her go-to explanation for everything. Working late. Work. Not answering texts for hours. Meetings. Random weekend plans I wasn't invited to. Just needed space. And yeah, I tried to be understanding. I really did. I told myself relationships go through phases. That I shouldn't be clingy or paranoid. But here's the thing, she started lying. And I don't mean big, obvious lies at first. Just little inconsistencies. Stuff that didn't add up if you paid attention. Like saying she was at the office, but I could hear background noise that definitely wasn't an office. Or telling me she hadn't seen a certain friend in weeks, then casually mentioning something they did yesterday. Every time I questioned it, she'd flip it on me. Why are you always suspicious? Do you not trust me? You're being exhausting. And I started to believe her. I actually thought maybe I was the problem. But there was this constant feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. Like I was living next to someone who looked like my wife, but wasn't acting like her anymore. I didn't know it yet, but that gut feeling was the beginning of everything falling apart. So yeah. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Until the night everything started to feel actually wrong. It was a Thursday. I remember because I had a long day at work and just wanted to crash. She texted me around 6 p.m. saying she'd be stuck late again and not to wait up. Same script as always. Normally I would have just accepted it. Maybe felt a bit annoyed, eaten dinner alone, watched something dumb, gone to bed. But that night, something in me just didn't buy it. I don't have a better way to explain it. It wasn't proof. It wasn't logic. Just that same gut feeling, but louder. Around 8:30 p.m., I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. Okay. Weird, but fine. Maybe she's in a meeting. I texted, hey, everything good? No response. An hour passed. Now I'm pacing around the apartment like an idiot, checking my phone every 2 minutes. I tried calling again, same thing. Voicemail. This is where my brain started doing that spiral thing. What if something actually happened? What if she got into an accident? What if I'm just being paranoid again? Then at around 10:15 p.m., she finally texts back. Sorry, crazy night. Still at work. Talk later. Short. Cold. No emojis. No love you. Nothing. And here's the part that messed with me, I almost let it go again. But instead, I did something I'd never done before. I checked our shared location. We had it on mostly for convenience, groceries, safety, whatever. I rarely looked at it. She wasn't at the office. She was across the city, in a part of town she had zero reason to be in. Not near work. Not near any friends, at least none that I knew of. Just there. I stared at the map for a solid minute, thinking maybe it was glitching. It wasn't. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just this quiet, sinking realization. She had just lied to me. Straight up. And for the first time, I couldn't explain it away. I wish I could say I handled that moment calmly and rationally. I didn't. At first, I just sat there staring at the location. Like it might magically jump back to her office and prove me wrong. It didn't move. So I zoomed in. Apartment complex. Not a bar, not a restaurant. A residential building. My stomach dropped in that very specific way where you already know what something means, but you're still trying to negotiate with reality. Maybe she's visiting someone. Maybe a coworker lives there. Maybe there's some totally normal explanation and I'm about to blow this up for nothing. I almost texted her right then. Something passive like, "Hey, I thought you said you were at work." But I didn't. Instead, and I'm not proud of this, I grabbed my keys and drove there. The whole drive felt unreal. Like I was watching myself do something I couldn't take back. My hands were literally shaking on the steering wheel. I kept thinking. If I'm wrong, I'm going to look insane. If I'm right, I don't even know what happens next. It took me about 25 minutes to get there. Her location was still pinned to the same building. I parked across the street like some cliché stalker and just sat there, engine off, lights off, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Minutes passed. Maybe 10. Maybe 20. Time got weird. Then I saw her. She walked out of the building. Not alone. There was a guy with her. I'd never seen him before. Late 30s maybe. Casual clothes. Way too comfortable standing close to her. And here's the detail that still replays in my head. She was laughing. Not the polite, surface-level laugh she'd been giving me for months. A real one. Relaxed. Easy. Like the version of her I thought was gone. He said something, and she lightly hit his arm. They stood there for a second, talking like they belonged together in that moment. And then she leaned in and kissed him. Not a quick, accidental thing. Not something you could misinterpret. A kiss that told me everything I'd been trying not to believe. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't confront them. I just sat there, completely still, feeling like my entire life had just been swapped out without my permission. And the worst part? My phone buzzed. It was her. Still at work. Don't wait up. That's when the shock turned into something else entirely. I wish I could say I handled that moment calmly and rationally. I didn't. At first, I just sat there staring at the location. Like it might magically jump back to her office and prove me wrong. It didn't move. So I zoomed in. Apartment complex. Not a bar, not a restaurant. A residential building. Multiple entrances, dim lighting, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. My stomach dropped in that very specific way where you already know what something means, but you're still trying to negotiate with reality like a desperate lawyer. Maybe she's visiting someone. Maybe a coworker lives there. Maybe she forgot to tell me. Maybe I'm about to destroy my marriage over a misunderstanding. I picked up my phone at least 3 times to text her. Something casual. Something non-accusatory. Hey, how's work going? When do you think you'll be home? Or even just, are you actually at the office? But every version felt pathetic. Like I was begging her to lie to me better. So I didn't text. Instead, and yeah, I know how this sounds, I grabbed my keys and left. The drive over there is kind of burned into my brain now. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because of how quiet everything felt. No music. No thoughts that made sense. Just this constant loop in my head. Turn around. No, keep going. You're overreacting. Then why does this feel so real? My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight they actually started to hurt. I didn't even realize it until I loosened them for a second and my fingers kind of tingled. At one point I actually laughed, like a short, empty kind of laugh, because I realized how insane this whole situation looked from the outside. A grown man driving across the city at night to check if his wife is lying. But it didn't feel insane. It felt necessary. I got there in about 25 minutes. Her location was still pinned to the same spot. I drove past the building once, slow, trying to get a feel for it without being obvious. Then I circled back and parked across the street, half in shadow, like I was trying to hide from my own life. And then, nothing. I just sat there. Engine off. Lights off. Phone in my hand. I kept refreshing the location, like that would somehow change things. It didn't. Minutes stretched. I checked the time, 9:17 p.m. I remember thinking. If she walks out alone, I'm going to feel like the worst person alive. If she doesn't, I don't even know who I become after that. At some point, my brain started doing that thing where it tries to protect you. It started rewriting the story in real time. She's probably helping a friend. Maybe someone's going through something. You're going to laugh about this later. And for a few seconds, I almost believed it. Then the front door opened. She walked out. And I knew immediately. Not because of what she was doing, not yet, but because of how she looked. Relaxed. Not tired from working late. Not stressed. Not distant. She looked light. Like whatever had been weighing on her at home didn't exist out here. And she wasn't alone. There was a guy next to her. Maybe late 30s, like I said. Nothing flashy about him, but he carried himself like he belonged there. Like this wasn't new. They were close. Not touching at first, but close in that way people are when there's already something between them. I leaned forward slightly in my seat without even realizing it, like getting physically closer would somehow change what I was seeing. They stopped just outside the entrance. He said something, I couldn't hear it, obviously, but whatever it was, she laughed. And that laugh hit harder than anything else. Because I hadn't heard that version of her in months. With me, everything had been short, sharp, irritated. Conversations felt like negotiations. Even small talk felt like effort. But here. She was easy. Open. Warm. She lightly hit his arm, playful, familiar. Not something you do with someone you barely know. And that's when the last bit of denial started to crack. My chest felt tight. Not like panic, exactly. More like pressure building up with nowhere to go. I told myself. Maybe this is just a moment. Maybe it's inappropriate, but not what you think. Then he stepped a little closer. She didn't move away. And then she leaned in and kissed him. Not rushed. Not awkward. Not something you could twist into being harmless. It was natural. Like they'd done it before. Like they were going to do it again. And just like that, everything inside me went quiet. No yelling in my head. No racing thoughts. Just this heavy, cold clarity. I remember gripping the edge of the steering wheel again, but this time I wasn't even shaking. It was like my body had decided, okay, this is real now, we're not guessing anymore. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't confront them. I didn't honk, didn't shout, didn't do anything dramatic. I just watched. They stayed there for a minute or two, talking. At one point he put his hand on her lower back, and she didn't flinch. If anything, she leaned into it slightly. That detail messed me up more than the kiss. Because it wasn't just physical. It was comfortable. And then, because apparently the universe has a sense of humor, my phone buzzed. I looked down. It was her. Still at work. Don't wait up. I stared at that message, then back at her standing under that streetlight with someone else. And I felt something inside me shift. Not just she's cheating. But she's been lying to my face, over and over, without hesitation. That's when the shock started turning into something sharper. Not explosive anger. Something colder. Like a line had just been crossed, and there was no going back to who I was an hour ago. I didn't confront her that night. I know some people reading this are probably thinking, why didn't you just walk over there? Catch them in the act. Blow it up right then. Honestly, I've asked myself the same thing. But in that moment, I felt detached. Like I was watching a scene I wasn't ready to step into yet. If I walked over there, everything would become real in a way I couldn't control. There'd be shouting, denial, maybe a scene in the street, and I didn't trust myself to handle that without completely losing it. So I stayed in the car. I watched them for a few more minutes. Eventually, they separated, not in a rushed, guilty way, but casually. Like they both knew this wasn't the last time. She got into her car. And here's the part that still feels surreal, I waited a bit, then followed her home. Yeah. I know how that sounds. But at that point, I needed to see how far the lie would go. The drive back was slow. She didn't speed, didn't seem nervous, didn't check over her shoulder. Just, normal. Like she hadn't just destroyed something I thought was real. I pulled into our parking lot a couple minutes after she did and stayed in the car again, watching. She sat inside her car for a bit, probably on her phone. Then she stepped out, fixed her hair in the side mirror, and walked inside like it was any other night. I waited another minute before going up. When I opened the door, she was already in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. She looked at me, slightly surprised, but not in a caught way. More like she hadn't expected me to be awake. "Oh, you're still up," she said. That tone. Casual. Neutral. Like nothing was wrong. I remember just staring at her for a second, trying to reconcile the person in front of me with what I had just seen 30 minutes earlier. "Yeah," I said. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, took a sip of water. "Work was insane," she added, shaking her head. "I'm exhausted." There it was. Another lie. Delivered effortlessly. No hesitation. No cracks. And I realized something in that moment that honestly hurt almost as much as the cheating itself. She had gotten good at this. "Long night?" I asked. She rolled her eyes slightly. "You have no idea. Back-to-back meetings, then my boss dumped extra stuff on me last minute. I was stuck there forever." I just nodded. I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I watched her. Every movement, every expression. Looking for. I don't even know. Guilt? A slip-up? Anything human. But she was completely composed. She walked past me, brushed my shoulder lightly, a normal, familiar gesture, and said, "I'm gonna shower and go straight to bed, okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Of course." And just like that, she disappeared into the bathroom. I stood there in the kitchen, alone, listening to the sound of the shower turning on. And that's when it really hit me. Not the image of her kissing him. Not even the lies. But the realization that I was now standing in my own home, pretending everything was fine, while knowing it absolutely wasn't. I sat down at the table and just stared at nothing for a while. My brain started racing again, but differently this time. Less shock, more calculation. How long has this been going on? Who is he? Is this the first time? Has she been coming home to me after being with him, regularly? Each question felt worse than the last. The shower kept running. And I had this weird, intrusive thought. She's washing off the evidence. I hated that thought. But I couldn't unthink it. After about 15 minutes, she came out like nothing had happened. Changed into pajamas, hair damp, scrolling on her phone. She didn't try to touch me. Didn't try to connect. Just gave a quick, good night, and got into bed. I followed a few minutes later. Lying next to her felt wrong. Like I was sharing a space with someone I didn't actually know anymore. She turned away from me almost immediately. And I just lay there, staring at the ceiling in the dark, replaying everything over and over again. The laugh. The way she leaned into him. The kiss. The text, still at work. At some point, I realized something else. This wasn't going to go away on its own. And pretending I didn't know. That wasn't an option anymore. I didn't sleep at all that night. By morning, I had already made one decision. I wasn't going to confront her blindly. If she was going to lie, I needed to know how deep it went first. I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all, because I hadn't. She, on the other hand, completely normal. That was the first thing that hit me in the morning. She was already up, making coffee, scrolling through her phone like it was any other day. No tension. No awkwardness. No sign that anything had changed. Meanwhile, I felt like my entire reality had been cracked open overnight. "Morning," she said, not even looking up at first. "Morning," I replied. I watched her for a second. Trying to see if there was anything different about her now that I knew. There wasn't. Same movements. Same voice. Same casual energy. If I hadn't seen what I saw the night before, I would have believed this version of reality without question. That's what messed with me the most, how easy it was for her to switch between those two lives. "You look tired," she added, finally glancing at me. "Didn't sleep great." She nodded like that was expected. "Yeah, you've been kind of off lately." That almost made me laugh. I've been off. Not her disappearing, not the lying, not everything else. Just me. "I guess," I said. She took a sip of her coffee, then casually said, "I might have another late one today, by the way." There it was again. So soon. No hesitation. Just setting up the next lie like it was part of her daily routine. Something inside me tightened, but I kept my face neutral. "Busy week, huh?" "Yeah," she sighed. "It's been brutal." I nodded again. But this time, instead of questioning her, instead of reacting emotionally, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Because I realized something during that sleepless night. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. She'd twist it. Minimize it. Maybe even turn it back on me again. And I didn't have anything concrete except what I saw, which she could still try to explain away somehow. I needed more. Not for revenge. Not even for her. For me. So I decided to play along. "Want me to make breakfast?" I asked. She looked slightly surprised. Sure." Small thing, but I noticed it, that flicker of surprise. Like she wasn't expecting kindness from me. Or maybe she wasn't expecting me to act normal. "I've got time," I added. As I cooked, I kept things light. Asked about work. Made small talk. Even joked a little. And she relaxed. That's when I started seeing it more clearly. The patterns. She checked her phone constantly, but subtly, like she didn't want it to be obvious. Quick glances. Slight smiles she tried to hide. At one point, her phone buzzed while she was in the bathroom. I wasn't planning to do this. I told myself I wouldn't be that guy. But after everything, I looked. Just a preview on the lock screen. No name. Just a number. And a message. Last night was worth it. That was it. That was all I needed to know. This wasn't some one-time thing. My chest felt tight again, but I forced myself to stay calm. I put the phone back exactly where it was and stepped away like nothing happened. When she came back, she didn't even check it immediately. That told me something too. This wasn't new. There was no panic. No urgency. Just routine. We ate breakfast together like a normal couple. She talked about work again. Complained about her boss. Made plans for the weekend, vague ones, of course. And I sat there, nodding, responding, playing my role. But inside, everything had shifted. I wasn't guessing anymore. I was collecting. By the time she left for work, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and walked out the door, I had already made another decision. I was going to find out who he was. And exactly how long this had been going on. Because whatever this was, it was bigger than just one lie. The second she left the apartment, everything changed again. That normal husband act I'd been putting on all morning. Gone. I locked the door, stood there for a second, and just exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for hours. My hands were shaking again, not from shock this time, but from adrenaline. Like my brain had fully switched into figure this out mode. I didn't have a plan. Not a clean one, anyway. But I had pieces. A location. A number with no name. A message that definitely wasn't innocent. And the very clear knowledge that my wife was living a second life she thought I knew nothing about. So I started with the most obvious thing. Her laptop. She'd left it on the table. Not unusual, she worked from home sometimes, so it was always around. For a solid 10 seconds, I just stared at it. Because opening it felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But then again, what line were we even talking about anymore? I opened it. No password. That alone hit me weird. Not because it was suspicious, it had always been like that, but because it showed how confident she was. How safe she felt. Like there was no way I'd ever look. I checked her messages first. Nothing unusual. Work chats, a couple of group threads, normal stuff. Too normal. Then email. Same thing. Clean. Boring. She wasn't stupid. If she was doing this for a while, she wouldn't leave it somewhere obvious. So I thought back to the phone. That message wasn't from a saved contact. That means one of two things. Either she deliberately didn't save his name. Or she saved him under something else. That thought made my stomach turn a little. I went back to the kitchen, grabbed my own coffee, sat down, and started thinking it through more carefully. Patterns. That's what I needed. So I pulled up our shared calendar. Again, normal on the surface. Work blocks, random errands, some social stuff. But then I started cross-referencing. Late nights. The ones she told me about. And yeah, there it was. At least twice a week, sometimes more. Always work. Always last minute. But now I knew better. I grabbed my phone and checked the location history. Not something I'd ever paid attention to before, but now it felt like opening a door I didn't know existed. And it hit almost immediately. That building. It wasn't a one-time thing. She'd been there before. Multiple times. Same pattern. Evenings. Sometimes for hours. Sometimes she'd go straight there after work. Sometimes she'd go home first, then leave again. I leaned back in my chair and just stared at the screen. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was ongoing. And suddenly all those little things from the past few months started clicking into place. The distance. The irritation. The sudden need for space. The late nights. The lies that didn't quite line up. It wasn't random. It was structured. And that realization hurt more than anything so far. Because it meant she hadn't just crossed a line once. She'd built a whole system around it. I don't know how long I sat there before I moved again. Eventually, I went back to her laptop. This time, I checked her browser. History was mostly clean, or wiped regularly. But not perfectly. There were gaps. And in between those gaps, a few things slipped through. Searches for restaurants in that part of the city. Parking near that same building. Even a couple of late-night food orders delivered to an address that wasn't ours. I clicked one. Same street. Same building. That was it. At that point, there was no more, maybe. No more benefit of the doubt. Just facts. Cold, clear, undeniable. My wife wasn't just cheating. She had a routine. A place. A person. And I had no idea who she had become in that version of her life. I closed the laptop slowly and just sat there in silence. Because now the question wasn't if. It was. How far do I take this before I confront her? And more importantly, am I ready to hear whatever comes next? I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick, which I never do, but there was no way I could function like a normal human being while all of this was unfolding. Instead, I stayed home, and kept digging. Not in a frantic, chaotic way like earlier. This time, it was slower. More focused. Like I was building a timeline. I grabbed a notebook. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but my head was too full to keep everything straight, and started writing things down. Dates she worked late. Times she wasn't reachable. Location pings at that building. And the more I wrote, the worse it got. This wasn't just weeks. It went back at least 3 months. Possibly longer, but that's where the pattern became obvious. 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes more. I actually had to stop at one point because I felt physically sick. Like, I stood up, walked to the sink, and just stayed there for a minute trying to steady myself. Because when you see it laid out like that, not as suspicions, but as a pattern, it hits differently. This wasn't some impulsive thing. This was part of her life now. And I had no place in that part. Around early afternoon, I hit another wall. I still didn't know who the guy was. And that started to bother me more than I expected. Because he wasn't just some abstract other person anymore. I had seen him. His face, the way he moved, how comfortable he was with her. He was real. So I went back to the only lead I had, that number. I couldn't access her phone directly, she took it with her, but I remembered the last 4 digits from the notification. Weird what your brain decides to hold on to. So I opened our phone bill online. Yeah. I know. At this point, I'd crossed every line I used to think I'd never cross. But honestly, those lines didn't mean much anymore. I scrolled through the call and text logs. It took a while, but eventually I found it. A number that showed up over and over again. Calls. Texts. Late at night. Early morning. Some days, there were dozens of interactions. Dozens. I just stared at it. Because that's when it really clicked. While I was sitting next to her on the couch. While we were eating dinner. While I was asking her about her day. She was actively talking to him. Constantly. I clicked further into the details. No name attached, obviously. But I could see timestamps. Durations. Patterns. And then I saw something that made my chest tighten again. Long calls. Like 40 minutes. An hour. Sometimes more. Late at night. On nights she told me she was too tired to talk. I actually laughed at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it almost felt like a bad joke. At some point, I leaned back in my chair and just said out loud. What are you doing? Not to her. To myself. Because I didn't recognize the situation I was in anymore. This wasn't just betrayal. It was like I had been slowly erased from parts of her life without even noticing. And replaced by someone who got her time, her attention, her energy, the version of her I hadn't seen in months. I sat there for a long time after that. No more searching. No more digging. Just thinking. Because now I had enough. More than enough. The question wasn't what's happening anymore. It was, what am I going to do about it? Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. Call her, send screenshots, force everything into the open. But another part of me, the calmer, colder part, held me back. Because I knew exactly how that would go. She'd deny. Deflect. Maybe admit just enough to minimize it. And I didn't want a half-truth version of this. I wanted the full picture. So I made a decision that honestly scared me a little. I was going to wait. Act normal. Watch. And when I finally confronted her, she wouldn't be able to lie her way out of it. Not this time. That evening felt surreal. After everything I had seen, everything I had pieced together, I was now sitting in my own apartment waiting for my wife to come home, like nothing had changed. But everything had. Every sound felt louder. Every minute stretched longer. I kept checking the time, then stopping myself, because I already knew the pattern. She wouldn't be home early. Around 7 p.m., she texted. Running late again. Don't wait for dinner. Same script. Same tone. I just replied, okay. That was it. No questions. No pushback. If anything, I leaned into it. Because now I wanted to see how far she'd go when she felt completely safe. Around 8:30, I checked the location again. Same building. No hesitation. No variation. Like clockwork. And something about that made it worse than the first night. Because the first time, there was still shock. Uncertainty. Now. It was confirmation. Routine. Choice. I sat on the couch, staring at the TV without actually watching anything, just letting that reality sink in. My wife was with someone else. Again. Knowingly. While keeping up this completely normal conversation with me on the side. At one point, I picked up my phone and hovered over her contact. I could call her right now. Ask her directly. Force her to lie to my face in real time while I watched her location sit in that same spot. I don't know why, but that idea almost tempted me more than confronting her in person. Just to hear it. To hear how easily she could say it. But I didn't. Instead, I waited. And around 10:45 p.m., I saw the location move. Same as the night before. She stayed there for hours, then left. I felt that same tightness in my chest as I watched the dot move across the map, heading back home like everything was normal. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, anything to do something with my hands. Because now I knew exactly what was coming. The door would open. She'd walk in. And the performance would start again. Right on schedule, I heard the key in the lock. The door opened. She walked in, dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes like she always does. "Hey," she said casually. "Hey." I stayed calm. Neutral. "How was your day?" she asked, heading toward the kitchen. "Fine. Yours?" She sighed, dramatically this time. "Long. I swear, this week is going to kill me." There it was again. I watched her as she moved around, opening the fridge, grabbing water, completely at ease. And I realized something that genuinely shook me. She wasn't nervous. At all. No hesitation. No checking my face for suspicion. No guarded behavior. Which meant one of two things. Either she was incredibly good at lying. Or she truly believed I had no idea. "Did you eat?" she asked. "Yeah." "Good," she nodded. "I didn't have time." Another lie. Or maybe not, I honestly didn't know anymore. "Busy at the office?" I asked. She didn't even blink. "Yeah. Non-stop." And that's when something inside me snapped, not outwardly, not in a dramatic way, but internally. Because I was sitting there, looking directly at her, knowing exactly where she had been. And she was still choosing to lie. Effortlessly. Like it was nothing. I leaned back slightly and said, "Sounds rough." She shrugged. "It is what it is." Then she glanced at her phone, and I caught it again, that small, almost unconscious smile. Gone in a second. But I saw it. And I knew it wasn't about me. "I'm gonna shower," she said after a moment. "Okay." Same routine. Same timing. Same everything. She walked past me, disappeared into the bathroom, and a few seconds later, I heard the shower start. I sat there, staring at the hallway, listening to the sound of the water. And this time, I didn't feel shock. I didn't even feel immediate anger. Just clarity. Because this wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't uncertainty. This was a pattern she had built, maintained, and was continuing, right in front of me. And I was done pretending I didn't see it. I didn't confront her that night either. But not because I was unsure. Because I was preparing. Because now, it wasn't just about catching her. It was about ending this in a way where she couldn't twist the truth. And I was getting close to that point. The next few days were the hardest part so far. Not because I was discovering new things, I already knew enough. But because I had to live with her like everything was normal while carrying all of it in my head. And let me tell you, that messes with you. We had dinners together. Sat on the couch. Talked about random, everyday stuff. At one point, we even laughed about something stupid on TV. And the whole time, there was this constant voice in the back of my head. She was with him yesterday. She's probably texting him right now. She's going to see him again soon. It got to the point where even small things felt fake. When she touched my arm in passing. When she asked me about my day. When she said, "Good night." Every interaction felt hollow. Like I was talking to two different people at once. One version, the one in front of me, was my wife. The other, the one I knew existed now, was someone else entirely. And I couldn't reconcile the two. But I kept playing along. Because I was still watching. Still waiting for the right moment. And that moment came sooner than I expected. It was Saturday morning. We were both home, which hadn't happened much lately. She was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I was in the kitchen making coffee. Everything felt calm. Almost too calm. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and immediately stood up. "I'm gonna take this," she said quickly, already walking toward the other room. That alone was new. She hadn't been that obvious before. I didn't follow her. But I didn't need to. Because for the first time, she slipped. She didn't fully close the door. And I could hear parts of the conversation. Not everything, just fragments. Her voice was softer than usual. Lighter. "Yeah. I know." A pause. "No, he doesn't suspect anything." That line. That one line felt like it hit me physically. I froze in the kitchen, coffee forgotten, just listening. Another pause. A quiet laugh. "I told you, I'll figure it out, just not yet." My hands clenched around the edge of the counter. Because now it wasn't just lying. It wasn't just cheating. She was actively talking about me. Planning around me. Positioning me as, what? An obstacle? A placeholder? I didn't hear the rest clearly. After a minute or two, her voice dropped lower, and then the call ended. I stepped back slightly, making sure I was in a normal position when she came out. A few seconds later, she walked back into the living room like nothing happened. What was that about? I asked casually. She didn't even hesitate. Work, she said. Just some last-minute issue. Of course. Same answer. Different situation. I nodded slowly. On a Saturday? She shrugged. Yeah, it happens. And that was it. No tension. No cracks. Just another lie added to the pile. But this one was different. Because now I knew something I hadn't before. She didn't think I knew. At all. She was comfortable enough to say that out loud, he doesn't suspect anything, without worrying. And that changed everything. Because it meant I had the advantage. For the first time since this started. I wasn't the one in the dark. She was. And that gave me something I hadn't felt in days. Control. Not in a revenge kind of way. Just, clarity. Because now I wasn't just reacting to what she was doing. I could decide what happened next. I looked at her sitting there on the couch, completely at ease, scrolling through her phone, probably messaging the same guy she was just talking to. And I realized something. I was done waiting. I didn't need more proof. I didn't need more time. What I needed was the right moment to end this. And I had a feeling it was coming very soon. That Saturday afternoon felt surreal. I didn't say much to her. Not because I was scared, though part of me was, but because I wanted her to keep talking, to keep being herself around me. The more normal she acted, the more obvious the lie became. I spent the morning pacing, checking little things, phone buzzes, the faint sound of messages pinging, the subtle way she glanced at her screen when she thought I wasn't looking. It was exhausting. Mentally and emotionally. But I felt sharp. Focused. Like I had been asleep for months and suddenly woke up fully aware. Around 2 p.m., she mentioned she had to run out for a quick errand. I didn't even flinch. Sure, I said casually. She smiled, not that genuine warm smile I remembered from the early years, more like a habitual gesture. Back soon. I watched her leave. Door closed. Silent apartment again. And then, for the first time, I let myself think clearly about what I wanted to do next. I realized two things. 1. She wasn't going to stop lying. Not voluntarily. 2. I wasn't going to ignore this anymore. I decided I needed to confront her. But not in a screaming match, not in a half-hearted accusation. I wanted her to see that I knew everything. Every detail I had gathered, every lie, every late-night text, every smile she had tried to hide. She had no idea how much I already knew. I started planning it in my head. Timing, words, proof. I didn't want her to manipulate the situation, twist the truth, or gaslight me. I needed her to face it, and I needed it to be undeniable. And then, something unexpected happened. I got a text from her while she was out. Hey, can you pick up some groceries? Forgot milk and eggs. Thanks, smiley face. At first, I almost ignored it. I didn't want to interact. But then something hit me, she still expected me to perform my role. To be the dutiful husband. Even now. While she was living a double life right under my nose. So I grabbed the list, got in my car, and drove to the store. The whole time, I couldn't shake the image of her with him. Her laugh. That kiss. The way she moved around him like she hadn't done with me in months. It was a punch to the gut. And yet, oddly, it fueled me. Every step I took, every aisle I walked down, I felt the plan solidifying in my mind. This wasn't going to drag on anymore. By the time I got back home with the groceries, I was ready. Not angry in the explosive way, not desperate. Just, ready. She was already home when I walked in. Casual, humming a little, putting the bags away. Same effortless composure I had been watching all week. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation, like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing I had to jump. And then I said it. "Can we talk?" Her head snapped up. For a second, there was nothing in her face. Then a smile. Small, automatic. Polished. "Of course," she said. "What about?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her. Let her sense that something had shifted. And in that moment, I realized, the confrontation was finally here. I was about to face the full truth. And there was no going back. She followed me to the living room, still calm, still composed, still wearing that fake casualness like a shield. I sat down on the couch and gestured for her to do the same. "Sit," I said quietly, not angry, just, steady. She obeyed. Perched on the edge like she wasn't sure what was coming. That's when I realized she didn't know how much I actually knew, and that made my next words even more powerful. "I know about him," I said. For a split second, she froze. I could see it in her eyes, just a flicker, like she had finally hit a glitch in her own perfect performance. What?" she started, voice tight, trying to sound casual. "I know about the building. The nights you told me you were at work. The late calls, the texts I saw." I stopped for a moment, letting it sink in. Let her feel it. Her face shifted from mild confusion to a flash of panic, almost imperceptible, but it was there. "Wait, what are you talking about?" she asked, voice rising slightly. "I know you've been lying," I said, calm but firm. "And I know who you've been spending time with." Her shoulders tensed. Her eyes darted around, like she was looking for an escape, somewhere to grab the conversation and twist it back in her favor. I don't know what you mean," she said quickly, voice higher now, sharper. I felt my chest tighten, the anger bubbling up, but I didn't let it explode. Instead, I kept my voice low. "I saw you. The other night. With him. The kiss. The laugh. The texts. Everything. I know exactly what's been happening for months." She went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth, then back down. She blinked rapidly, clearly trying to form a lie on the spot. It's not what it looks like," she said. "Not what it looks like." I laughed, bitter, quiet, impossible to control. "You've been living a double life. Lying to my face. Smiling at him while texting me, stuck at work. You're good, I'll give you that. Too good." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then she started pacing a little. It's complicated, okay? I didn't mean for it to happen like this." I couldn't believe it. She had the audacity to try to minimize this. After everything I had seen. "Complicated?" I echoed. "You mean selfish. You mean dishonest. You mean destroying what we had while pretending to me that everything was fine." Her eyes flashed, defensive now. "I love you. You know I love you. But, it just happened." I laughed again. Short. Harsh. Just happened. Months. Multiple times a week. Do you even hear yourself? She flinched, then tried another tactic, tears. Fake, sudden tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." But I could see through it. The lies, the rehearsed guilt. I had watched her lie so perfectly for months, and now she thought tears would undo it. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Do you understand what you've done? The trust you've broken? The life you've ruined, not just for me, but for us? She flinched again, biting her lip. I didn't think it would go this far. I got caught up, okay? I shook my head slowly. Caught up? You planned it. You executed it. You kept up this act like it was nothing. And now you expect me to just forgive you? She looked at me, desperate, teetering between anger and panic. I can explain. I can fix this. We can work through it. And that's when I realized, she didn't actually care about us. She cared about the version of herself that could lie, cheat, and still walk around pretending everything was fine. I felt something in me shift again. Not anger. Not pain. But clarity. Cold, cutting clarity. I don't know if that's possible anymore, I said. Her face dropped. For the first time in months, she looked small. Vulnerable. Scared. And I realized, I had all the power now. I knew everything. And she knew I knew. I took a deep breath and said, quietly. We need to figure out what happens next. Because this isn't a marriage anymore. Not like it was. She didn't respond immediately. Just sat there, trembling slightly. And in that silence, I felt the first real sense of control I'd had since this nightmare began. We were at the breaking point. And I knew, finally, that nothing would ever be the same again. The rest of that evening was tense in a way I'll never forget. She stayed on the couch, half leaning back, half trying to make herself smaller, like a kid caught sneaking cookies for months. I sat across from her, calm on the surface, but every nerve in my body screaming. She tried again. Please. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you. It's complicated. I took a deep breath. Complicated doesn't cover months of lying, multiple nights with someone else, pretending to be at work while you were elsewhere. Complicated doesn't cover stealing a life we built together. Her hands shook. I noticed the way her eyes kept flicking toward the door, like she wanted to disappear. You don't get it, she whispered. He makes me feel alive. I didn't mean to hurt you. And I froze. Not out of shock, I already knew. Not out of anger, that had settled into this heavy, cold weight in my chest. I froze because I realized how little she cared about us. She didn't care about the marriage. She didn't even really care about me. She cared about herself, her thrill, her freedom to lie without consequence. And that realization hit harder than the first time I saw them together. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the destruction she'd caused. Instead, I leaned back in the couch and let silence do it for me. Minutes passed. I counted them in my head. Each second stretched endlessly. Finally, I said, quietly but firmly, I don't know if we can come back from this. And honestly, I'm not sure I even want to try. Her face fell. I could see the panic now. Not the calculated panic, the real one. The one that comes when you realize you're standing at the edge of something you can't control. No, we can fix it, she protested, voice cracking. We can go to counseling. We can talk. Please don't throw everything away. I shook my head. We've been talking. I've been talking to you for months while you've been doing this behind my back. Talk doesn't fix betrayal. Trust does. And you destroyed that. She started crying, real tears this time, not the practiced kind. Big, messy, desperate ones. But the damage was already done. I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Not now. Not after everything. I realized that night that love alone doesn't fix deceit. That sometimes, no matter how much you care, you can't go back to someone who has so thoroughly rewritten the rules without your consent. I stayed quiet, letting her cry. Letting myself feel. Not angry, not screaming, just, shattered and aware. And in that silence, I made my first solid decision. I wasn't going to stay in a marriage where my partner had so casually erased the foundation we'd built together. I didn't have the exact plan yet. I didn't know the logistics. But I knew the direction. And for the first time in months, I felt a strange relief mixed with pain, a strange clarity in the middle of chaos. Because I realized something else, this wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about me reclaiming my life. And that's what I was going to do. The next few days were a blur of emotion. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat properly. Every time I caught her glance or heard her voice, I felt a tight knot in my chest, anger, betrayal, disbelief all rolled into one. But underneath it all, a strange thing was happening. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started processing it. The first night after our confrontation, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I thought about every little lie, every stolen night, every time I had felt that gut punch of suspicion and ignored it. I felt the raw, hollow ache of betrayal settle into me like a heavy stone. And then came the anger. Not the explosive, yelling kind, but a deep, simmering fury. How dare you? Feeling that refused to let go. I thought about confronting him, the guy she'd been seeing. My brain imagined every scenario, yelling, threats, chaos. But somewhere deep down, I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't bring back trust. It wouldn't fix the months of lies. It would just make me another pawn in her deception. So I didn't do that. Instead, I focused on me. On what I could control. On what mattered, my own dignity, my own sanity. I started small, extra walks, writing things down, calling friends I hadn't talked to in months, even just venting. Every step felt like a little reclaiming of myself. And somewhere in the middle of the chaos, I felt grief. Real, painful grief. For what I thought we had. For the life we built together that had been slowly, secretly dismantled without my knowledge. For the trust that was gone forever. It wasn't just sadness. It was the loss of someone I loved deeply, who, in secret, had betrayed me at every turn. But alongside grief, there was clarity. I knew what I had to do. Not in a panic. Not out of vengeance. But because I finally saw the truth, some things can't be fixed, and sometimes love isn't enough to heal deception. By the end of that week, I had made a decision. I wouldn't stay in this marriage. I couldn't. I realized that staying would only allow the cycle to continue, the lies, the double life, the erosion of my self-respect. So I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. Making sure I understood what steps I needed to take. Legal steps. Emotional steps. Personal steps. Everything. Because this wasn't just about ending the affair. It was about reclaiming my life, my space, my identity, my peace of mind. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. Even through all the pain and betrayal, I could see that I would survive this. I would get through this. And eventually, I would be free of the lies that had slowly suffocated me. I just had to take the next steps. A few days later, I finally set the stage for the final confrontation. I told her we needed to talk, seriously, with no distractions. She raised an eyebrow, that practiced, sharp look she always had, like she was ready to twist things in her favor. I didn't flinch. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. I had all the evidence laid out in my mind, the location data, the texts, the timeline of her lies. I didn't need to show her everything. I just needed her to know I knew. I started calmly, each word deliberate. I know about him. I know the building, the texts, the lies. I know everything. And I'm done pretending I don't. Her expression shifted, from surprise to defensiveness, then panic. She opened her mouth, tried to say something, but I held up my hand. Don't. Save it. I don't want your excuses. I don't want your justifications. I just want the truth. Do you still want this marriage? She faltered. Her voice cracked. I don't know. I love you, but I made a mistake. I didn't mean to. I cut her off. Mistake. This isn't a single mistake. This is months of planning, of hiding, of lying. You've already destroyed the trust. You've already decided. Her shoulders slumped, the bravado gone. I could see the fear now. The realization that I wasn't fooled, that I wasn't going to accept her version of reality. I just wanted to feel alive, she whispered. I shook my head. At the cost of us? At the cost of me? That isn't living. That's running away. There was silence after that. Heavy, suffocating silence. She didn't know what to say. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just let her sit with the truth she'd ignored for so long. Then I said the words that felt impossible to say at first. I'm leaving. I can't be in this marriage anymore. I tried to make it work, but you've made your choice. Now I have to make mine. Her eyes filled with tears, real tears this time. Not fake, not rehearsed. But I didn't soften. I didn't argue. I just watched her face, knowing the trust we had was gone forever. She tried to reach for me, to grab my hand, to plead. I pulled back gently. Not out of cruelty, but because I had to protect myself. I hope someday you understand what you lost, I said quietly. And then I left the room. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of relief, like a weight I didn't fully realize I'd been carrying had finally lifted. After I left that room, everything felt different, empty, heavy, but also, strangely liberating. The days after were hard. Packing up, separating finances, telling close friends, and facing the reality that the person I thought I knew had been living a secret life. There were moments of anger, waves of grief, nights when I couldn't sleep because every memory of us felt tainted. But slowly, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in months, clarity. I realized I wasn't staying in this marriage because of love or hope. I was staying because I didn't know what else to do. Once I claimed my life back, everything shifted. I remembered who I was outside of her lies. Who I wanted to be. I started to rebuild small things, my routines, my hobbies, reconnecting with friends. Even small victories, like sleeping through the night without dread, felt monumental. I learned to recognize my own boundaries, to honor my feelings, and to trust my gut, the same gut that first sensed something was wrong months ago. I also learned this: betrayal doesn't just hurt in the moment. It reshapes your perception of the people you love, of trust, of yourself. But it also teaches you what you will and won't tolerate. What you deserve. So here's my advice to anyone who finds themselves in a situation like this. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Collect the facts, but protect yourself emotionally. You can't control the other person, only how you respond. Confrontation is necessary, but timing and clarity matter more than drama. Prioritize your own well-being. Betrayal isn't just about the other person's actions, it's about how you let it affect your life. Healing takes time, but reclaiming your identity is the first step. I don't know what my ex-wife's life looks like now. I don't care to know. What I do know is that I survived this, and I'm stronger for it. I can love again someday, but I will never compromise my dignity or ignore red flags the way I did before. And that's the lesson I carry: betrayal can break you, but it can also teach you the limits of love, patience, and self-respect.